I think lots of people today feel the pressure to buy a home kind of lead to people overlooking the potential benefits of starting a property investment portfolio.
I've started and built a property portfolio over the last 9 years before I've even looked at buying my own personal home to live in.
I mean, did you even want to buy your own home?
For me, at that age, I was still a bit unsure of what I wanted to do or where I wanted to even go.
If we're 23 and we're not sure where we want to live, how can we actually start a property portfolio?
Getting yourself knowledgeable and understanding what needs to be done.
If we could teach that a little bit more in schools, imagine the youngsters.
Yeah, it would be something else for sure.
Before we jump in, let's tackle one of the biggest hurdles for property investors: finding the best buy-to-let locations for top returns. Over the years, we've helped countless individuals pinpoint the most profitable locations and maximise their rental income. To make it easier for you, we've put together a free guide to buy-to-let hotspots for 2025, designed specifically for you to understand the market, stay ahead of the trends, and it even includes a list of our top 10 locations in the UK. Get it now for free by clicking the link in the description below and start building your property portfolio today. Welcome to This Property Life, the podcast where we deep dive into the real world of property investing, aiming to inspire and entertain both aspiring and active investors. I'm Sarah Blaney, a seasoned property investor and your host for today's episode. Today we're tackling a common dilemma faced by many aspiring property investors. Should you buy a home for personal use or start building a property investment portfolio? And to help us navigate the topic, I'm joined by Jordan Kynoch, who has first-hand experience with this very challenge. So welcome, Jordan, to This Property Life.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So let's dive right in. Jordan, I think lots of people today feel the pressure to buy a home. It's like a milestone of success. We're heavily influenced by society, expectation, personal aspirations of home ownership, especially here in the UK. But I think it kind of leads to people overlooking the potential benefits of starting property investment portfolio before actually securing their own personal home. So do you think that people are missing a trick by prioritizing personal home ownership above all else?
Yes, I actually do. And I suppose I am one of those individuals who I've started and built a property portfolio over the last 9 years before I've even looked at buying my own personal home to live in. So I am very much on that side of the fence where I've created now a business, monetary value and fortune of my income that as now can then result in buying a personal home at this point in time when I know I'm a bit more ready for it and a bit more grown up to take that plunge.
And of course, for those who are listening to today's episode rather than watching on YouTube, just to give you some context. So Jordan, you came to property as a bit of a young'un, didn't you? So people that can't see how young you look even now, tell us when you started.
So yeah, for those that can't see, I've definitely hiding the grey hairs a little from the side of the head and the beard. But I came and started property at 23 years old. So I came through the old traditional background of went to school, then went to university, got myself a degree, went and fell into a role in business. I was doing personal training, set my own company. So I was working 6 in the morning till 9 at night, 5 days a week. So it was a lot of strenuous time and not really much of a lifestyle for myself at 23. So I knew something had to change. And obviously the avenue of property is one which you hear about, and I heard about a lot, for giving passive income and that continuous income that you can kind of support yourself and live off without really having to do work continuously. It's do the work once, get paid for life in some aspects. So yeah, I was quite a young spring chicken at the time when I came through property to start with, and obviously 10 years down the line now, a bit more a seasoned veteran, I'd like to think.
So there you are, you're age 23, you're working all hours, sort of like 15-hour days for a lot of the week. I mean, did you even want to buy your own home at that stage?
There's always the aspirations, and you see from parents having their own home, and it's that nest egg and the security. But for me at that age, I was still a bit unsure of what I wanted to do or where I wanted to even go. I was looking at potentially moving overseas. I had family and friends in Australia, so I was having that as a potential outlook to move overseas and experience that for a couple of years. So I didn't at that age know where I wanted to base myself, settle down, and kind of build those roots. So I had a little bit more freedom to be a bit more versatile if needed, depending on my decisions that I was making. So yeah, it wasn't. I know I wanted a home, and I've got these aspirations where I've got you see the grand designs and what you're wanting to build, and the amazing kind of features you can put into a home. But yeah, at that age, I I probably didn't have.
You weren't quite ready.
Yeah, I wasn't quite at that stage yet in life.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people like that know at some point they definitely want to get onto the property ladder, but it's not right now. And life is doing other things, and you're doing other things. And I guess there's also a few people who are thinking, actually, I do want my own home. I'm ready to do that. And I want to buy it in this postcode or this specific location. And I'm being priced out of the market a little bit and I can't quite afford it at this stage. So I guess there's two people that might come to this dilemma of own home or property portfolio. And it's the ones that aren't quite sure whether they want to buy yet, not quite sure what life's going to throw at them. And then the ones that know, but they can't afford it. And I think from my perspective, looking in and then with the benefit of hindsight as well, because I wish I'd started my property portfolio way earlier than we did. We sort of started, not too dissimilar to yourself, like 10 years ago, but you had, almost 20 years on us. So we were quite late to it all. And I wish I'd started at your age. So I guess that I just really want to impress upon anyone listening that could be in their early 20s or whatever age. If you aren't quite ready to decide where you want to live, please do look at alternative streams of income and especially property, because I think it is a great vehicle. And you too could build a portfolio that, I guess, Jordan, for you now, we're 10 years later, that portfolio, how's it going to help you when you are ready to pull the trigger and get that own home for yourself?
Yeah, I think more the benefit is the financial income that I'm now generating. So from my past life of personal training, I wouldn't ever be able to fathom making as much as what I am now within my business and my portfolio. So as an actual financial output, I'm now in a much more stronger position to be able to buy my own home and have that affordability to show to the lenders and mortgages and getting that financial income to be able to buy the kind of forever dream home that I want to be buying. And okay, I might have some knock-on effects for first-time buyers from the way I've structured my business, but in the grand scheme of things, the bigger picture is I'm now in a more educational position to know what I should be buying and if there is any issues within a property, which there can be in some cases, then it won't scare me to do the works. And it's actually my partner actually asked, would you ever want to just buy something shithole as I normally buy anyway within my portfolio and want to transform it to make it our own home? And in some aspects I would, because it's taking away from my business, I'm thinking more with my head, not my heart. And it's all business and focus on what needs to be done for the demographic and who I'm renting or selling to. But for your own home, then you're going to be putting that more emotional attachment and heartfelt position into it. So if it was to be buying some land or buying a house which was completely run down, then I already know how I could transform it into the dream home I wanted, rather than having to take someone else's cookie cutter that they've created and have to form or fit into it. So I think in that way, the way I've positioned myself financially is obviously a great benefit, but also the knowledge and the mindset I have of there isn't anything too big that can't be fixed. Because obviously over the last 10 years, I've come across many problems and many situations that you have to resort to and fix to bring it back to a good home. So I feel that's probably put me in a better position, and more so now I'm about to get married, so I'm in that more stable position where I want to create that nest egg for me and my future wife, and then obviously children. So it gives that more of a personal attachment and kind of building roots now that I'm in a point of life where I feel a bit older now and have a bit more things coming in the forefront, which is going to be that next stages in life. But I've been able to, over the last 10 years, focus on me and focus on the business to get to this
Yeah.
point where I can then focus more further down the line in the fruits of the labor and enjoy the life that I've now obviously created.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there are definite pros of going through a property education just by buying properties and doing them up. That is the biggest education of all. Before you go and buy your own home, because because you've done a lot of flips and a lot of trade-in property, that when you're doing up a property for a target market of that first time buyer, they want it ready done. They want to just walk in, have nothing left to their imagination. It's all staged. It all looks amazing. Someone else has thought of everything, and you've got that experience, haven't you, of doing that, and you can then basically be trading your own home, your actual own main residence, because you've got that power team in place. As you said, nothing phases you. We've seen an awful lot in different properties and what they can throw at us, and it's okay. We just get through it. So you've got all that experience as well, haven't you?
Yeah, it's definitely been a blessing in disguise of how it's turned out now. And there's certain properties which I probably would have looked at years ago and thinking, yeah, that's actually fitting for us. But now I'm realizing that's actually not quite the type of property I wanted, or the style, or just what was intended at that time. I've definitely moved on in the positioning wise. So, and one big thing probably with going on the mindset part is I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I'm not trying to keep up with my friends who are built. I've got a house first, and that was always one of those ones. You never want to be left behind or have that FOMO of missing out. And everyone else has got their own homes and they've created that. But what they've done in creating their own home, they've then not done all these other massive goals or achievements, which now I have been able to do in my early years and build that foundation. So I'd say some people feel it's necessary and it's the traditional route to follow, but you don't have to be a traditionalist. I've got a motto, or I've got 3 mottos I live by, but one of my main mottos is be a shepherd, not a sheep. So I like to always create and do something that I want to do rather than just follow the crowd or follow the flock. So that's where I kind of have put myself now with creating this business and creating the portfolio, which again, what I've been able to take from that in the age I have been over the last 10 years from 23 to 33, those life experiences, those life achievements, and the enjoyment that I've been able to have, being flexible with my time because I'm working for myself, having the financial benefits that I can travel and do things for a couple of weeks on end and go on multiple holidays a year. That's because I've had that moment now, and when I'm still relatively fit and healthy after all my injuries from years of sport. But that's given me those options from being able to create that portfolio at an early age to enjoy it, and then come down to the point of building that house and further next steps within families. So I think it's the
Yeah.
most sensible route of doing it, so you're not rushed into something and having to make mistakes early doors, because you might not have that knowledge that you want to know where or when you want to be settling down.
Yeah, definitely. And let's rewind 10 years. So there you are, Geordie. It's 10 years ago, you're 23, you're doing the personal training, but you realize that working 15 hours a day, 6 days a week is not where you want it to continue. And you've looked at property as a way of escaping that and I guess changing up your life. I mean, how did you actually do it? Because most 23-year-olds, and let's just stereotype just to get a rise out of some people, but most 23-year-olds are going to be, out enjoying themselves, going to festivals, going to the pub, spending their money, their disposable income, as I think I probably was when I was 23. What was going through your mind? How did you even reach this decision?
Yeah, great question. So I've don't get me wrong, I've definitely had a great life and I've enjoyed myself when I was younger. I was again going out when you could, out to friends' houses, and then going out clubbing when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 over university days. So I kind of scratched that itch, as much as you probably want to call it. But I just knew in myself there were certain further aspirations I wanted to achieve in just general life. Of seeing like the way I was given a upbringing from my parents and the amazing things that we were able to do as a family and go on incredible holidays and that kind of time factor. And that was actually one of my biggest whys and my biggest reasons for when I did come through at 23, which might sound a bit crazy to some, because most 23-year-olds will think they want to have the flashy car, the expensive watch, and then kind of wear all the designer gear and kind of go into a club and buy a table and a big bottle, which is 10 times the amount that you'd normally buy from the supermarket or whatever. So that didn't really excite me. It wasn't that. It was
Right.
more the time factor, because yes, there's been moments in my life and I've had close friends or family members that have passed away sooner than they probably should have. And that then gave me a point of, your biggest commodity isn't the money, it's the time factor that you've got. So I wanted to make sure that when the time came, being with partner and creating a family and having children, I want to be there to drop the kids off at school. I want to be there to pick them up. I want to be at every sport game, recital, whatever it might be, but I was there on hand, which I was fortunate my parents were able to be there for pretty much everything that I was able to do and achieve. So I wanted to kind of have that same thing. So my biggest reason of doing this was creating that time factor, that I could do what I want, where I want, when I want, without having any
Yeah.
restrictions or any limitations. So that was my driving force in doing this all, was that time factor to put towards the things I wanted to do and things that was going to fulfill me most, rather than it just being
Yeah.
I still like the materialistic stuff, but I'm not going and buying like designer clothes to then go and walk around, because that doesn't bother me that much. It's more the experiences of traveling the world and ticking off those bucket list goals, which is what my kind of main focus and target had been at that age.
I think that to have that insight at that age is quite unusual. And, I mean, I've got well, as you know, Darcy, my 15-year-old, is coming through to that stage where she's got to choose her A levels. And, all that they chat about is going to university and all that sort of stuff. And I think, university definitely has its place. Whether it has as much of a place as it did in my day, I don't think it does. She is already saying to me, what do I want to go and study for 3 years? I just want to get out there, start, learning, earning, and getting on. And, she's already got that hunger. And if I compare her at 15 to me at 15, her insight is way more. And, I think your insight as a 23-year-old was way more than again, my insight as a 23-year-old and probably a lot of people. So I think, you were really blessed actually to have had that at that age and to actually acted upon it.
Yeah, and there definitely were sacrifices. I have to admit, there was definitely sacrifices that you had all your friends, or I was missing certain birthday parties or birthday nights out with my mates, and doing the necessary of having to commit a lot of time into my property business, because I was still working, doing my own personal training business alongside my property business and starting to build that up. So I was committing my weekends to doing the property side of things and my late evenings. And yes, I did probably miss a good chunk of birthdays and kind of events and kind of relationship stuff and family events. But in that grand scheme of things, it was a sacrifice for a small period of a couple of years, 1-2 years, 3 years at max, to then put myself in a position where I've never missed anything ever again because of that positioning.
Yeah.
So it was one of the things. There's everything that you do a commitment to, there's always going to be some sacrifice that you have to give. But a sacrifice for 2 or 3 years of in my early 20s, when all it's going to do is give me well, back then I probably wasn't getting that many hangovers compared to now, but it's still chucking your money on expensive alcohol that is just going to make you feel a bit rotten the next day, to
Yeah.
having the moments now where I've got the time to pick and choose and have that. So yeah, there's, like I said, there is sacrifice, but it depends on the goal at the end of it. To what really has motivated me ever since is having that bucket list goals, and I'm a competitive man, as you know. I'm very, very competitive in what I do. So I hate to lose, and I hate to, even if it's a board game or it's kind of doing anything sport related or physical, then I hate to lose in it. So I think that definitely was another mindset and help for me to, if I'm going to commit to this, I'm not doing it half-arsed. I need to be fully committed to make it work, because I don't want to walk out of this, first of all, with a financial expense that I put towards learning about it. Then I want to make sure I at least return myself for that money, and then do what
Yeah.
it takes after that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know we've explored the pros at a board level, and you've definitely, there's some cons always with it. And I think, you're really right there. It's some of the things that you sacrifice whilst you're building up something else. But, is the why big enough that it's worth the sacrifice? And in this case, absolutely. But, if you're sacrificing those things due to things like hangovers or whatever it might be, is the why big enough on those things? And you've got to say no. I mean, it would be, looking back on that, people that say, I haven't got time, I'm too busy out enjoying myself. Fast forward, and what would your future self say to your 23-year-old self? And I think we all know the answer. Would you rather, a little buy-to-let portfolio? Would you rather a history of hangovers and regrets? It's easy for me to say, I guess, that
And
I think it's definitely one.
those people that are probably that you're hanging out with then won't be the people that you're standing next to now, or being involved with. And that was one of the big things. Again, early age is, you are worried about what people perceive you and think of you. And like I mentioned, not trying to keep up the Joneses by buying a house at a certain age, which should be the thing to do in society. But it was, even when I started, all my best mates from school were kind of taking the mickey out of me when I was doing my social media and presenting what I was up to, and they were kind of, whatever
Yeah.
tagline I would put, they would kind of mickey it a little. But now they're the ones that are coming to me, and they're wanting to be investors with me, and they're wanting to be part of this, or know a bit more, and they actually take an interest. So it's being true to who you are and what you want to achieve in it, because they're not going to be there 10, 15, 20 years down the line potentially to give you a helping hand. So you got to create it for yourself to do.
So there we are. If we're 23 and we're not sure where we want to live, and we don't know where we're going to live. B, do we have the money to actually go into, home ownership? You know, how can we actually start a property portfolio? I mean, how people are probably out there thinking, well, if I can't buy my own house, how can I actually even build a portfolio? But you're proof that it's happened. So just, very briefly, Geordie, just give us a bit of an overview on how people can start.
Yeah. So as Sarah said, it's easily done. The biggest bit is education, getting yourself knowledgeable and understanding what needs to be done. Because my initial knowledge was TV shows of DIY, SOS, Homes in the Hammer, Grand Designs. That was where the extent of my property knowledge was, and even going back to the days of changing rooms. So that tells you my age from those times to watch. So from that, it's the education part, but it's being able to put yourself out there to be gaining the direction of being able to raise money that is not your own money. And that was what kind of blew my mind the most within property, was I could buy properties without putting my hand in my pocket. And that's where, and even to this day now, like I said, 9 years of physically purchasing property and a good number of properties under my portfolio that gives me a good lifestyle, that has all come from private investors' money. I've never had to put my hand in my pocket once to physically buy a property with a transaction. So that's where the biggest turning point for me was, to then think, well, I don't have enough money to buy my own home right now because I'm still at the early stage of development and earnings from being out of university. So instead, I can focus all my time and effort into building that pot up by using other people's money to create my portfolio and generate future wealth, which is kind of come from other folk that I've been able to borrow from, but giving them a better return on their money as
Yeah.
well. So that's the biggest learning that I took from it, was it's not always need to be yourself that has to do something. There is plenty other avenues and plan B, C, D, E's that you can tap into to actually create what you want
Yeah.
from it. It doesn't have to just be this one road. You should be in a roundabout, and you can take as many exits as you want, depending on your strategy, situation, and circumstances.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? If you were looking at buying your own home, you're constricted by the areas that you personally in your heart wants to live in. You're constricted by potentially, the residential mortgage lending environment, which has, strict laws on stress tests and multipliers and income and all of that sort of stuff. But if you switch into a investment property headset, you're not restricted by area. You can go anywhere in the UK to go and buy those properties, which opens up far better yields for people that are currently living in high property value areas. You also have so much more creativity at your fingertips, as Jordan said, to raise money from other people. It's not just about slogging away in a day job to raise enough money for a deposit to then put down on a buy-to-let investment. That's one way of doing it, but there's so many other ways, and that's what makes it quite exciting.
Yeah, I've been. It still baffles me to this day when I look at kind of. It's more when I'm driving the streets and my investment areas, and I purchase all around the country, Scotland and England, from an hour and a half away to 4.5 hours away from where I physically live. So that's kind of gives me the sense of I can be spread across to where is best performing. But when I'm driving the streets in certain areas, and like when I was first with my partner, and we were going round, and I had to do a couple checks and things, and I was like, oh yeah, I own that one, I own this one, I own this one, I own this one, I own this one, and it's a surreal experience and surreal thing to think, like, there's one street I've got 5 on the same street, and there's only 7 houses in the block, and I own 5 of out the 7. So I'm trying to buy those other 2 to then basically own the whole block, and hopefully I can change the name
Gonna
to.
say, I bet you can leaflet drop in, knocking on.
Indeed. Trying to see when they're going to give up the ghost, and I can swoop in there to buy the property from them. So, yeah, it's that kind of.
If you own the street, Geordie, I've heard from Caroline that you can rename it to whatever you desire.
Oh, that would be it. That would be I might have to put a poll out to find what people I should call the street name. But yeah, it's one of those surreal experiences. So yeah, being able to create that passive income and that life, and have those assets which are future wealth that's can be passed down generation by generation, and is also just producing me money, is kind of where I always wanted it to be. So it gives me that time and flexibility. So having and I think the biggest perception of people, and it was a bit of advice that I did hear when I was younger, near the start point, and we're starting to speak to brokers, and this was the benefit of speaking to people who know what they're talking about. So taking recommendations from others that have already used those individuals in the environment that you are. Because there was one broker, and I won't obviously name the company or anything else, but the broker actually stated, you can't buy a buy-to-let until you have your own home. And I was very taken back by that, because at this point I had already bought a couple buy-to-lets at this stage. So I was maybe already four or five buy-to-lets down. And this broker's like, oh, I don't know how you've been able to do that. You can't buy a buy-to-let until you own your own home. I was like, well, I've got proof that I've had 5 of them already without that situation. So being surrounded by the right team and the right people that will give you the correct advice and knowledge is crucial. And people might ask, how do you know if it's correct knowledge? It's utilizing others who have already walked the walk and can talk the talk. So if someone that you're trying to gain information from or knowledge, if they haven't done it themselves, then that's probably a clear indication of not to listen to that advice, and listen and speak to someone who has actually done it and show and track record of that happening to be able to then take it on within your own circumstances.
To sum up the pros and cons, and we are about property on this podcast. It's called This Property Life for a reason. We are passionate about it, but I do honestly believe that if you're in a position at the moment where either you don't want to commit to your own home, or you're not quite able to, I guess, jump to the bank's hoops of property affordability for the place that you truly want, then there is nothing stopping you to start the portfolio of property investment, so that can then aid your search and your ability to get the right property in the right area where you want. So you don't have to sacrifice on that. People always say, I can't get on the property ladder. But I think this is a great example of yourself where, okay, you weren't quite ready, but equally you probably couldn't afford to buy where you can afford to buy now. So, you've used property investment as a amazing stepping stone, like a leaping stone really, to then be able to actually get the thing that you want, rather than sacrifice and move, 10, 20 miles out of the key area that you want to be in.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. And I'm not wanting to be jumping ship 2-3 times in life. I never wanted to get your first home and it's got your 1-bed flat, and then you have to move into maybe a 2-bedroom terraced house, and then you have to then move into another and another. That's just too much hard work and faff for me, to be honest with you. I'd rather just get to a point where we are now, that we can then commit into doing almost a forever home. And that's the kind of goal of it, is try and miss a few steps and miss a few tens of thousands of pounds worth of extra tax that you have to pay, or moving costs that you have to pay, and those necessities. If we don't have to do that, then it's a win-win, and it's better in my pocket than not. So being able to go to that stage of, and again, doing property, it's allowed me to know what I want, rather than just being well, I'm not sure, so I'm just going to get whatever is in front of me and settle. I'm very much sort of not settling for just the middle road. It's settling for what is truly wanted.
Yeah, and it gives you, yeah, exactly. It gives you that financial stability, the flexibility. Another thing that I'm just thinking of as we're chatting now is, and I'm sure you've done this as well with people when you've gone out and mentorship with them, and that sort of thing. I've been out with an awful lot of younger investors who are looking to start in property investment, like yourself, as your 23-year-old. We've actually gone through what we call a PPR strategy with them, and said, actually, I know you're not quite ready to start thinking about settling down and buying your own home and staying in one place for a while, but what if we did actually buy your own place, and we used it to get something that was a bit run down. You can add value to it, much in the same way that we'd sort of talk about in our property investment thing, but actually for your own home. You don't have to live there forever. Just move in, use it as a rental in many instances. Get a couple of lodgers in; they can help you, pay for the renovations and the mortgage when you do have it. And you can actually use your PPR as a good experience thing as well. And it doesn't have to be the forever home, but it is another little route. And I think the way you just said, I didn't want to follow the traditional path. There's so many different paths, but we're kind of just taught one.
Yes.
And I think it's quite restricting.
Yeah, and like you said, it's maximizing what you have in front of you. So if you do buy a home, yeah, if you can rent out a couple of rooms to actually pay for your mortgage of it, then why wouldn't you? There's so much flexibility and so much creativity. It's probably the best word to use about it. There's so much
Yeah.
creativity within property that you can do, and there's always new ways and tips and tricks and tactics to be able to maximize from what you have in front of you to do something bigger and better. So it's looking outside the box in many scenarios, even though we are trying to buy a brick box, but we're trying to look outside of that box to see how else we can build off of that and it's almost like you're trying to put extensions on your house to then have different sources and avenues for your property. So yeah, buying a home is not a bad thing. It's obviously it's a nest egg, it's an asset, you can ring fence that within your business and your life to then have as that as your safety barrier, and that's what a lot of people feel they need to have, is that safety barrier and the house, that it's there for them if shit hits the fan, then they've got their home to rely upon. So
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing. It's just you've got to know what your positioning is, and if you really want to commit that, because that's a lot of capital that you have to commit into that property. And even if you have some capital, like I started, I didn't really have anything, but if I did have some capital, then that would restrict me potentially using that capital to put into 2 or 3 other buy-to-lets, which generates me 5, 6, 7, £1,000 worth of income, and that £1,000 worth of income then can pay for my mortgage on my actual home. And
Yeah.
that's how I'm looking at it. Every property that I've ever bought, I've always put it towards something. So if I wanted to lease my car, I needed a house that gave me X amount of money to then cover the cost of that car. And as soon as I got that house to cover the car, then I got the car. Same thing with the house. Or like if it's for school fees, then I've got an HMO or 2 HMOs that cover the cost of when the kids come along for school fees. So it's being able to then use your assets to pay for your liabilities and expenses. So when we do get the house, I know I'm already in a position that is 99% consistent money coming in because of buying in the correct area, the high demanding. So I know I'm never ever really going to be having any voids or any um like periods where I'm not getting rentals. So that property portfolio now services my physical home, and that's a really enjoyable way of looking at it, is your business is paying for your home for you to live there. So it's not like you having to put your hand in your pocket and pay the mortgage every month. It's the assets have done it for you. So it kind of takes that little bit more relief and stress away. So that's one other way that I've looked at it, is utilizing every asset that I buy to then putting it to almost a liability in some aspects or an expense. And that's how I've done it and I'm in that position now that I've got enough of the income to cover any expense from when we do get our forever home.
Yeah. Which wedding first, and then
Yeah,
looking at that next, I
yeah.
guess.
Next
So,
steps.
but I mean, where can people expect to be in 10 years? Geordie, you started 10 years ago. I started 10 years ago. Our portfolios have really changed over time. And, that's the thing. We all go different directions. But what's your focus at the moment, and what sort of strategies are you going to be following for the next couple of years?
Good question. So, yeah, but strategies have definitely gone, as a lot of us know, the ladder that you kind of follow of doing your buy-to-lets, your social housing, multi-lets, HMOs. So that's all kind of been done and ticked and has been very, very consistent over the last 9 years of me doing this. I'm very much more in the working smarter, not harder scenario now in life. So, I'm liking buying more portfolios. So I'm doing a lot of work or minimal work for a lot of gain. So instead of doing 6 separate transactions, I'm doing one transaction to buy all 6 properties as one lump sum. So that's definitely stuff that I've been doing more recently. But I'm actually just going back to the basics, because over the next couple of years, we've got the wedding, honeymoon, then obviously future planning with obviously trying for children and then a house. So there's a lot of stresses which I don't need any more grays to my head than I do now, and I want to try and keep the hair at least. So I don't really want to put extra stress into life. So because I've done the last 10 years has
You've
been
done
that,
your hard yards, haven't
yeah,
you?
the last
You've
10
worked
years have
hard.
been the hard grafting to get me into position now. So buy-to-lets, little baby buy-to-lets. I've got one that's going in legals at the moment and another one which is in negotiations at the time. So little baby buy-to-lets, looking at maybe 1 or 2 flips a year that generates at least 20,000 profit-wise, and just kind of chipping them up. And if there's any other great opportunity that arises, then yeah, I'm obviously, of course, going to look at it, but it's not like I'm chasing the carrot to try and get that. If it comes on my table and it comes on my lap, then I'll assess it and it could be there. But for the next 2 years at least, it's replenishing the wedding fund that I've had to spend on this wedding and everything else. But yeah, flips to just keep building the pot for the house and deposits, and then little baby buy-to-let. So that's, and yeah, the portfolio side of things, if they come around. So that's kind of the focus just now, just to enjoy a bit of life and kind of reap the rewards that have been the last 10 years and kind of celebrate those successes of it.
Yeah, I think that sounds highly sensible, and I know that the wedding will be amazing and worth every single penny that you've that your houses have provided to pay for it.
Yeah, fingers crossed that all goes to plan.
It will indeed. And so I hope that today, if anyone's listening that is in a position where they're kind of like thinking, I can't even buy my own home yet, or I kind of don't want to, but I feel like I should be doing something. Hopefully Jordan's shown you how it can be done. He's proof of the pudding that it's completely possible, and he's built a really successful career on the back of it without actually purchasing his own home first, which is, I think, really inspiring, and something that a lot of people can grab onto. I think the thing that's resonated most for me is that from that young age of early 20s, you already had the strength of character to kind of go, actually, there's more than one path to take. And your motto of being a shepherd and not a sheep. I think if we could teach that a little bit more in schools, imagine the youngsters that we'd have coming out of the school system. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be something else for sure.
Cool. So Jordan, how can people get hold of you and watch your property career unfold?
Yep, just through the usual social links. So on Instagram is probably the best avenue to follow. Just Jordan.Kynoch, Kynoch, and Jordan with an AN. So that's the easiest probably way to process it. I'm normally very active on my social media, posting about just life in general, but also all the property, the developments that we're doing, the renovations, the walkthroughs, the pros, the cons, everything that kind of goes along with dealing with investing. So that's the easiest way. Instagram or Facebook is how they'll be able to reach out to me.
Perfect. And likewise for This Property Life, you can follow us on Instagram at This Property Life, or head to our website to thispropertylife.co.uk. And myself and Jordan were actually with each other at the weekend that's just gone, where we had our first sort of beta launch of a community group, a networking and membership group, which was absolutely amazing. There was sort of 60, 70 of us in a room, all just doing business, chatting. So if you're interested in becoming part of a bit of a property community where you can keep each other accountable, inspire and be inspired, then head to thispropertylife.co.uk, have a look at our membership options, because we have a couple of great membership packages that could be of interest to you and really help your property career get going. So thank you so much, Jordan. I know you're getting ready for the stag do of the century, so good luck. I hope that they are not too mean to you.
Thank you very much for having me, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.